Hello! Today we want to collapse this tower. If you want to get this exact model, I give you the link in the description. I actually got this model from TurboSquid, from CG Masters author, but in the link in the description I give you my version of this tower because I modified it a little bit in order to prepare it for destruction. I'm using Blender version 3.1.0 alpha. Once you get also the add-on for destruction, of which I leave you the link in the description, in order to install it, you go on Edit, Preferences, and in the add-ons panel, you click on Install. And finally, you can search for your add-ons zip file. Just select it and click on Install Add-on. Now, your add-on should appear in the list, and the checkbox should be activated. When you are done, just click on Save Preferences. Alright, I will start by using immediately rbdlab add-on and clicking on Start Annotation. This way you can easily draw your favorite cracks. There are many ways to fracture an object with this add-on, but I think that Vertices is one of my favorite because with that I can exactly predict how the tower is gonna collapse. Other techniques for fracturing are probably faster because it just requires a couple of clicks, but for this time I want to use the annotation pencil. Anyway, there are some things very important that you should already have done to your object to prepare it for the simulations, which are generic rules for any simulation. The things that you have to always check for your model are to apply the scale, apply the rotation, check the faces orientation and the normals, delete the loose vertices, and also check that there are not overlapping geometries that will create some problems during the physics simulation. This tutorial will be a little bit different from my usual tutorials because I will speak less, and instead I will just show you more of this screen record, which include a lot of play and replay the animation, changing the setting. That is a process necessary when playing with physics simulation. You don't need to be this precise when drawing the cracks, just barely made something that looks broken. I'm just enjoying the moment of drawing, I guess. I will show you in another video that you can actually make simulation in 10 minutes. Instead, for this particular scene, I used something like 45 minutes, just because I wanted to go huge and having a lot of details and fun in creating the process. And of course, the more time you use on it, and the better will be the result. In this video, you will see how much easy and also powerful will be to handle a huge simulation like this, which normally, if you try to do something like this by hand without the add-on, would be just a nightmare and would not give you the same good result. Believe me, because it's many years now that I'm playing with Blender physics system and I experimented all the possible ways to make it possible and good. When you are done, you can click on End Annotation or you can choose to click on Clear Annotation. I prefer to don't clear the annotation because this way you will lose it. Instead, I prefer to just manually hide it. Okay, in the fracture panel, select annotation pencil that we just created and change the max chunks number. I'm gonna use 350. Don't go too high with the max chunks. We are gonna boost the particles later. And finally, click on fracture. Wait a little bit. And the fracture is done. Now click on the annotation pencil and turn the visibility off, so that it will stay there without being deleted. At this point, I truly suggest to you to delete the loose vertices. So use the selection tool, select just one chunk, then press Shift G and choose Collection. Then press Tab 1A to select all the vertices. Then go to menu Mesh, Clean Up, Delete Loose. It's very important that after fracturing an object, you remember to delete the loose vertices, because they are gonna give a lot of problems later during the physics simulation. Alright, now it's time to add extra details. This is one of the most powerful functions of rbdlab add-on. Just wait a little bit. Basically what this is doing is that it's creating high resolution version of all the pieces and parenting them to the low resolution. You can tweak a little bit the size and strength of the noise until you are happy on how they look. Maybe I will stay on a size of 0.4. I suggest to you to don't exaggerate with the strength of the noise. I'm gonna increase the depth to 7, and also I'm gonna use a subdivision of 3. Don't worry for these holes because they will be automatically fixed later. When you are happy on how they look, you can click on Select Bad Chunks. It will detect the errors in the fractures. I'm actually going to deselect these because are not errors. Try to select not many of them. Please ensure that are selected only the pieces with errors, because if you select too many of them, it will just crash Blender. And to fix this problem, we simply click on Auto Fix Selected. Wait a little bit. Boop. Done. As you can see now, we get a realistic, concrete looking in our tower. And when you click on Apply, they apparently disappear. Instead, the cool news is that they will appear only in your final render when you export. In any time, you can activate the visibility of the high resolution in this panel. Anyway, it's highly recommended to work with the low resolution so that you can work fast and not have any problem. Alright, part 2. Physics, physics, physics. I'm just gonna click on the physics panel. I always increase the friction because I don't want my broken pieces to slide on the floor like gelato. And simply click on Add Rigid Bodies. And now it's physics time. If you play the animation, you should see your pieces falling down. You can simply click on Add Ground, that will provide a ready floor for us. Increase the friction of both the rigid bodies and for the partices. I also always increase the damping factor for the partices. This will be useful later. If you want to expand a little bit the ground, remember to apply the scale. Also, we can quickly hide the ground using the addon, so that we can have a clear vision of the entire simulation. Now, using Ctrl B and drawing a box, I'm curious to see how this appears on cycles. So let's activate transparent in Render Properties panel. And yeah, I'm using an HDRI. Alright, let's add a constraint now. Maybe decrease the strength, something like this, and add a glue constraint. If you play the animation, now your pieces should look like more connected each other. Well, I can increase the strength of the constraints. If I play the animation again, you can see that all of them are more connected each other. Now it's time to use the chunk isolate selector of the addon. That is a very interesting instrument to quickly select the pieces based on their dimensions. I'm trying now to select all the bigger pieces because I want to convert them to rigid body passive. Maybe I will manually add some specific pieces. Set this on passive. The blue parts are the rigid body passive, and they will not move during the destruction collapse. Okay, a cool suggestion that I give to you. I always do this in my destruction scenes. I try to convert in passive rigid bodies also some small parts that are in between the big shards and the small ones. And that's because this will help the simulation to look more realistic and stable. It's also a matter of distance from the constraints, but you don't care about this. Just do this. Set passive, passive everywhere. Also the highest part like this that presents some problems. I think we are good like this. Actually, where is this piece going? Little piece of rigid body. Be passive, please. It's very normal that complex geometries give some unrealistic fractures in complex parts like this corner. If you don't want to see these pieces moving, just set them on passive. Nice, I think we are ready for the distractions. So here is what we do. With the main collection selected, just create a cube in the top part of the tower. And now we're gonna use the addon tool from rbdlab addon. So first of all, go in the Scene Properties panel and turn off Rigid Body World. I used to activate the recording button in the timeline. We're gonna play the animation, and while the animation is playing, I'm gonna move the cube along the crack, so that I can easily record the keyframes for the location. When you are done, stop the recording. Here I am adjusting a little bit the last part of keyframes, because I actually don't want our addons to affect the lower part of the tower. You will see later that this will give a more realistic look to the tower collapse. If you play the animation, it should look like this. We want it faster, so just select all keyframes and press S to scale them in the timeline. And now it's moving faster. Let's create another cube that will move along the crack in the other side of the tower. Yeah, I'm gonna do for this one the first keyframe manually, because I want the collapsing to start from the roof and then go into the wall. So from now on, we can just record like we did before. So press again the record button, press space to play the animation, and just move this cube along the crack. Please don't forget to stop the recording at this point. I actually forgot to stop recording. Doesn't matter because I didn't have any consequences, luckily, but be careful for this. As we did before, delete this final part of the keyframes. And now your animation should look like this. Now select both cubes, activate the rigid body world, and in the rbdlab addon scroll down until you find the addon panel and click on Set Addon. I'm gonna use the chunk isolate selector to decide which pieces will be involved in this operation. And in the addon panel, click on Include Chunks. Finally, you can click on Recording in the addon. Basically, what this is doing with the addon is that the constraints that will be touched by these two cubes will be automatically broken. Once the recording is done, that will require some moments, you can try to play the animation, and you should see that the addons are operating. Where they pass, they destroy. Yeah, something like this. It works, but we can improve it. I'm trying to decrease the glue strength of the constraint to 1500. Click on Update. Okay, now I correct one thing. In the addon settings, let's click on Clear All. Select only constraints. you can have a faster computation if you select only constraints. And press again on recording. Basically, you can choose that your addon can affect the deactivation, the kinematics, and the constraints. But in this particular scene, I just want that our addon affect the constraints. This time we don't need to select the cubes because they are already set to addons, and the addon recognize them. Also, we don't need to select the chunks again because they are already set to be acetonized. Okay, now I will spend 2 minutes playing with just two settings that are the glue strength and the friction of the ground. So if you want, you can skip this part because it's not really necessary. Alright, at the end I noticed that my animation doesn't fit in the timeline, so I must increase the duration of our animation to 350 maybe. It's also very important that you go in the scene properties and increase the cache limit to 350 like the timeline. Now in the addon panel, click on clear all. I'm gonna select all the small parts and click on include chunks and recording again. I'm doing this because I modified the duration of the animation, so maybe some dynamics have changed. Actually, I can decrease the constraint strength to 2200. Click on update. This is exactly what I was looking for. Alright, next part we can finally do an important operation, that is bake all dynamics. That means that you basically saved your dynamics in your computer, so that you don't have to calculate every time. In the next part we're gonna convert all our physics to keyframes. But it's very important that you increase the duration here, matching your timeline. When you click on Bake Keyframes, you click on OK and wait some seconds. We must really be convinced about the result of the physics, because when you convert physics to keyframes, you will lose all your physics setups and you will not be able anymore to change the physics setting, because they are converted into keyframes. Now we can hide the ground. If you play the animation, now you can notice the animation plays in real time, because every object now has keyframes for the location, for the rotation. Let's give a general look on how they appear to be. You can always switch to low or high. Yeah, I'm liking this. Let's select the two addon cubes and make them invisible, because we don't need to see them anymore. Always work with the low resolution chunks. Third part, particles. It's super easy. Just select use brokens. I usually use a maximum particle system count of 4. And in range, let's see. Yeah, for the in range, let's just put 0 to 350, I don't care. And just create debris and it's done. The addon is automatically calculating the speed of every single chunks and animating the emission of every single particle system basing on the speed of the chunks. So when they are standing, they will not emit particles. Now I put these settings that I always use, that are my favorite. A count of 100 and trace on 15. Normal velocity always on 0, and instead object velocity on 0 point something, so that the chunks transfer their speed to the particles, and randomize on 1. Let's click on update. Not bad. We can improve them a little bit. I'm going to increase the end trace to 50, because I want every piece to emit particles for a longer time. Looking better. I'm actually going to increase the end trace to 100, because I want a longer time of emission. They are falling for many meters. They require high times. Let's go back on the physics panel. Select the smaller part using the selection tool. And we can click on Create Custom Debris. Let's rename the collection to Tower Debris. This basically is creating our favorite debris based on the pieces that we have in our scene, instead of using the default that are included in the addon. Another thing I want to do is to decrease the friction for the particles in the ground setting. Let's go back in the particles panel and see how they behave. Maybe I want to increase the count to 150. Also, I don't like the size. It can be something more, like 0.240. And actually we have to change the render collection to our custom collection that we appositely create. And click on Update. Every time you change settings in the Particles panel, you have to click on Update to actually see them operating. Let's change the size a little bit on 0.7. Yeah, size, they are too big. I'm gonna put them on 0.5. Update. It's not very much a good idea to play the animation in material preview with Vertices. Yeah, if you notice some weird behavior from the Vertices that are bouncing like crazy. That's a problem of Blender, sometimes can happen. What you have to do is just to select the ground. Maybe try to increase the damping factor that reduce the damping of the Vertices. If you put it on 1, the Vertices will actually not damp. They are not damping, but still that bug exists. So what I'm gonna do to fix this, don't worry, is to just activate the kill Vertices for the ground. And also, if you go in the Vertices setting, you can activate the dead option. Click on update, and now when the Vertices collide with the floor, they will just stop moving. And it's really great that you can just do it in one click. Thanks to the addon, because actually I tried to do it manually in some other works, and the dead option is one of the Blender functions that you cannot just click once for all the Vertices system for some reason. I tried the hold, alt and click, I tried everything. So this addon another time is proving to rock and roll. We can turn off the visibility of the debris here, and now it's time to think about the dust. Very easy, very fast. Activate the huge brokens, max particle system on 4, and create dust. Was it difficult? No. Wait some seconds. Alright, for the dust I will crank up this count value to 700 because I want a huge cloud of dust. Normal on 0 as always. Object velocity, I'm gonna put this on 0.1 because dust tends to travel slower compared to big objects. Let's try a size of 0.3 and let's put our custom tower debris collection. Click on update. Let's see. Something weird is happening with the ground. Let's see. Alright, we have to activate the dead option. Click on update. Maybe we can also increase already the size. Maybe we can already decrease the size to 0.250. And I'm gonna actually increase the count to 800. Update. You see how much easier it is to work on every Vertices system. And let's see. Yeah, not bad. Maybe they are too many. Let's decrease this to 600. And I want actually to have a size of 0.150 because they look too much big. Let's see. Alright, I think that my dust is traveling too fast. It should be slower. Let's do this. Let's turn off the visibility of the ground. My dust is appearing to be too much fast, so I'm gonna decrease the object velocity to 0 and randomize on 0.4. Maybe object velocity on 0.05. And I'm gonna decrease the count on 500. Update. Let's see. Yeah, this is a reasonable speed. Actually, I'm realizing that my particles are going through the ground. Don't worry if it happens, it's really normal. Turn on the visibility of the ground, please. Enter edit mode and just increase the thickness of the ground, because they are traveling so fast. And then remember to apply the scale, as always. I will never stop repeating to you that you have to apply the scale. This looks good. Now, let's turn back the visibility of the debris too. So now we got the debris and the dust visible all together. Let's see how they behave. As you can see, the simulation is going really slow because we are having many particle systems. And the guys of rbdlab addon has already thought about this, and they provide a solution. That is this. Let's just turn off the visibility of both the particle system. Scroll down until you find the filter particle tool. That is basically another selection tool. You can select the smaller parts and click on Mute. This will turn off the visibility of the particle systems of the smaller parts. That is a very great and smart move. You can do the same for the debris. And finally get back the visibility of both debris and dust. We have muted a lot of pieces now for both the viewport and the rendering. This means that we have got now a faster preview in the animation, a faster rendering, and also a better result in the simulation. It would be a great idea to do the same for the smoke. Speaking which, let's turn off the visibility of both the dust and the debris. And let's go to the final part, smoke. I always use mesh smoke. You can also choose the particles smoke, but I truly don't suggest it to you. So just choose mesh smoke and click on add smoke. I never liked Blender particle system for emitting smoke. A smoke domain has been added to the scene. My favorite settings are buoyancy density of -1 for the domain and a heat of 0. And a dissolve time 10 is really too fast. I'm gonna increase this to 250 so that the smoke will disappear very slowly. Now let's temporarily turn off the adaptive domain option because I want to scale the domain to my necessity. Put it above the ground a little bit, scale it up as you want. I don't suggest to you to work with a very big domain until you are just trying all the settings. You can work with a small domain and increase the size just before the rendering if you want to work faster. Alright, when you are done scaling, what you have to do? Tell me. You are right. You have to apply the scale. In the domain options, activate the bottom collision so that the smoke will collide with just the bottom part of the domain. And finally, we can turn on the adaptive domain option. Now, for the emitter option in the addon, I always use an initial temperature of 0 and click on Update. Let's select the smaller parts because we want to mute them in order to have a faster baking for the smoke, a faster render, as we already said. Let's see. Now we can try to play the animation. In Blender, I suggest to you that while you are building the setup for the smoke, just leave a very low resolution, just like 33 or 64 resolution for the domain, so that it's not going to be so slow and you can actually see what's going on. You're going to increase the resolution just before the rendering. While you are building your scene, you just have to focus on the general dynamics of the smoke, trying to imagine how it will appear when it will be with a higher resolution. Just don't care about how it looks now. Focus on the movements. As you can see, rbdlab addon has already calculated all the speed for every chunks, which is amazing. If you see, the density has keyframes now. These keyframes are automatically created by the addon that has detected the speed of every single object and has adjusted the density accordingly to the speed of every chunk. This means that if a chunk is not moving, it will not emit smoke, and the density of the smoke emission will increase as much as the speed of the object is increasing. To me, this is fantastic. I think we are ready. Okay, let's increase the resolution of the domain now. Also, you have to check that the cache for the domain match the duration of the timeline. Also, you have to turn on the visibility of both the particle system, and before the render, you have to click on Bake All Dynamics. In general, you will not see your smoke and particles in any render if you don't make any bake of both the particles and the smoke. We are done for today. As a last news, I remember to you that I'm announcing my Patreon, which I'm pretty excited about because I have many ideas to share on how I create VFX, and this will help me to dedicate more time to it. So if you feel like supporting me, hit me up, you can join there, and in the Patreon you will get extra tutorials, my original projects, assets, and a lot of other cool stuff. So have a nice one and see you next time.